my wife and I and our daughter and her family, we took a vacation this summer. We went to Plymouth, Massachusetts to see the historic sites there. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of what we actually saw and what we experienced. I mean, we saw all the regular touristy type things like the Mayflower replica. We saw Plymouth Rock, but what really struck me is that people going through the town, they really had no idea at all, not even a clue about what the Mayflower is about. It was, because I could hear the comments, people would say it. So what, they had no idea. Or Plymouth Rock. They're just, it's not really shared anymore. Whereas those of you who are my age remember growing up and we heard a lot about it. And I remember that right across from the pavilion where Plymouth Rock is, there's a staircase, a set of steps, very well made, going up the hill. And I figured, well, there must be some kind of museum or something up there. So I went up there and did not see a museum. I saw a sign in front of the buildings that were there that said private residence, basically keep out. I wound my way back down to the bottom of the hill. I saw a traffic cop there parked in his car, and says, gee, I mean, I went up top of the hill there. I thought maybe there might be some kind of museum or something up there. And he said, well, actually, there was a museum, a very good museum that I went to when I was a kid. But now they've turned it all into condos. So that was disappointing not to find a museum up there. But what I did find up there was actually quite moving. What I found up there turned out to be the holiest ground, what I consider to be the holiest ground in all of Plymouth, but probably the least visited. Up at the top of that hill, there's this large stone monument, kind of a sarcophagus looking monument with letters on it that are all falling off and in disrepair, not really kept up anymore. But what it said really struck a note with me and really touched me. Let me read to you what it says. This monument marks the first burying ground in Plymouth of the passengers of the Mayflower. Here, under the cover of darkness, the fast dwindling company laid their dead, leveling the earth above them lest the Indians should know how many were the graves. Reader, history records no nobler adventure for faith and freedom than this pilgrim band. In weariness and painfulness, in watchings, often in hunger and cold, they laid the foundations of a state wherein every man, through countless ages, should have liberty to worship God in his own way. May their example inspire thee to do thy part in perpetuating and spreading the lofty ideals of our republic throughout the world. This is the most hallowed ground in all of Plymouth, in my estimation. The people who paid the price, who came here, who were not adventurers looking just for economic freedom as the current narrative would tell you, but came here for a much loftier purpose. But there's another burial ground, which is a ways away from the harbor. You got to go travel some distance, and it's where the first fort was established, and it's here where many of Plymouth's notables are buried, including Governor William Bradford. And this gravestone is really kind of fascinating. It's not in its design or anything, or not by what it says in English, but really what it says in two other important languages. Look at what it says in Latin. It says, Qua patres difficilime adepte sunt nullite turpitur relinquere. What our fathers with difficulty secured do not relinquish through turpitude. What is turpitude? Well, turpitude means debauchery or wickedness. Actually, this inscription is a prophetic warning for us not to lose sight of our godly call and the commission of God, which was placed upon us at our beginning, lest, if we do so, we lose the very civil and religious freedoms upon which this nation was founded. It really is a warning that if we debase ourselves as a society, our liberty to worship and serve God as we desire may be taken from us. The day may come when we may only attend a church that doesn't teach about certain topics, or that we must now advocate new government-supported societal norms that are in direct violation of the Word of God. I mean, just as it was for the early Pilgrims, biblical faith in God may be outlawed. Salah. There's another inscription also. This inscription at the top in Hebrew. And it says, Adonai Ezer Chayai. The Lord is the help of my life. Hebrew. Okay? Well, as it turns out, that William Bradford, William Brewster, and many of the Pilgrims were avid students of biblical Hebrew. And when Bradford wrote his famous historical account of the early days of Plymouth, right there on the cover, he included a dedication in Hebrew. And inside his book, he included page upon page of his personal handwritten exercises in biblical Hebrew. The Pilgrims had a strong affinity for Israel and the Jewish people, and they had a strong desire to read and understand the Bible in its original language. Now, it's important for us to understand the motivation for doing this. You see, before they coming to America, in their quest for religious freedom, the Pilgrims first escaped to Holland, and they lived there for 12 years. But when they first got there, they first settled in Amsterdam, and guess where they met? In the synagogue, and they studied Hebrew. As a matter of fact, one of their number, Henry Ainsworth, was one of the most renowned Hebrew scholars in all of Europe. The Pilgrims felt a deep connection with the Jewish people, and they identified themselves with the suffering Old Testament children of Israel, where in the book of Hebrews chapter 11 it says concerning them, all these died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were pilgrims and strangers in the earth. Hence the name Pilgrim. That's how they got the name, Pilgrim. And when they came to America, what did they call their place of worship? They did not call it a church. They called it a meeting house, which is exactly what such a place of worship was called among the Jewish community, a Beit Knesset in Hebrew. The Pilgrims even referred to their colony as Little Israel. In essence, the Pilgrims were the first messianic one new man community on the American continent. And the first Thanksgiving, they modeled it after the biblical Feast of Tabernacles. And it did not take place on the fourth Thursday in November as established by Abraham Lincoln. A people for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A people with a heart for Israel's God and for Israel's Messiah. A people with a fervent desire to establish a society in communion with God and in community with each other. Is there any wonder that God would bless such an undertaking? So this Thanksgiving, remember, it's not so much important what we're thankful for as who we're thankful to. And also remember that joy is better than sorrow. God's shalom, his peace, is better than strife. Hope is better than despair. There's a better way to live. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy Thanksgiving.